Dun, 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 dun. Tilted
Kilted
balls.
balls.
Woo!
Yeah,
How
hope I
are
came through
you?
that time.
I hope so, because I re-listened to last times and you did not come through.
I re-listened as well. It was very
Yeah.
sad.
Were you sad about that? I was like, oh, he's gonna be so
I'm
sad.
busting some riffs over here, and then it's not even picking me up.
Yeah, I think it's one of your settings because I noticed it a couple times when we're on Discord. Like if anybody else is talking, you automatically cut out. Like
Hmm,
it's allowing you to be overpowered.
that's no good. But
Yeah.
this one came through.
This one
This
came
was
through
a good one.
great. I heard you. You sounded amazing. I think you should be a singer in a band. So,
I was thinking about that.
and for the rest of you, welcome back to the Kilted Balls podcast. So,
Yes,
yay.
yes.
Couple days late. Sorry for the delay. We had all of the funeral stuff that we've been talking about forever. Like all of that jazz finally happened. And so Tuesday got home super late and I was just drained. And then the funeral was Wednesday and I was drained. And now we're back and
We're
I'm
ready.
drinking a little bit of scotch and, just kind of happy to be here to talk to everybody. So,
That's awesome.
uh-huh.
Well, do you have anything profound to start with? Because I have something really fun.
Profound start. Well, we had a request yesterday for something. I can't remember what it was. So
Oh,
we should address the profound thing there. The other thing I got, and I don't know if this is profound,
mm-hmm.
but it has to do with drinking.
Yeah.
And that is, so we go to this funeral and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's sad like it's supposed to be. And you go to the luncheon afterwards, and people like leave, and like people in the family are like looking at me and they're like, what? Why are people not getting drinks? And I'm like, because you're at a Protestant funeral. I go, they're weirdos. I'm like, let's head back to the center of the state and we'll go get some drinks, like a bunch of weirdos. And they're like, okay. And so last night we went to the bar and we had some beers and we had some shots for Nana. And
Mm-hmm.
they're like, the one who's Italian, they're like, the last time we had somebody die, like we all went out to their favorite bar and had martinis, which was their favorite drink. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. When my dad died, we went right to the bar after the luncheon. And I was
Mm-hmm.
talking to some buddies from our D&D group today, and I was
Yeah.
laughing about that. And they're like, yeah, when our brother died, we went straight to the bar. Like the
Mm-hmm.
funeral thing, they're like, we were actually, they're like, you probably don't remember, but during the reception, we
Mm-hmm.
were in the back doing shots. I'm like, that's how it's supposed to be. And some of you on here may be like, what? Alcohol? No, I'm dry. I'm like, I'm sorry, but that's the Irish way.
Okay.
And clearly the Italian way. You celebrate people
Mm-hmm.
by having a drink for them. So
That's a good way. That's a good.
yeah, I think so. I've always thought I would have shots at my funeral. Like if I ever do die, which is kind of a stretch. I don't know if that would ever happen, but if
Yeah,
it did,
I think we've
you
talked
know,
about this before. I think we're right at that borderline.
like
Just
where people
depends how
die.
rich we're gonna be. Like
Yes.
if we have enough money, we're gonna be able to live at least a long, long time.
Yeah, I would think
Uh,
so. I would
like
think
your
so.
kids, and my kids, I think that they're definites. They're gonna be in. They're gonna be,
If they have the
unless
money.
yeah, it's still gonna be even for them. It's still gonna be a
For
decent.
everybody, they're never going to release control of that. They
Yeah, that's
being
they keep the
the
pores
powers
out.
that be. You got to keep the pores out. It's like a thing, right?
Shout out to Justin. He always says that.
Does he
Always made
say
me
that?
laugh. Yeah, he always says the pores.
But it's real. That's
It
like a
is. It's
real
true.
thing. And our society does that purposely. I remember there were people in our community, like they started, they did school of choice and all that stuff. And people are like, things have changed around here. This isn't like what it used to be. And I'm like, because they're poor. Well, no, just a different clientele.
Hmm.
Yeah, it is. It's a poor clientele. You elitist son of a
Yeah.
bitch.
Well, what was the
Oh no,
and
I got
the only
disconnected
reason I
from
thought
you.
about it is because around here we drove by and for some reason it came up in with Gina and I, there's a school here. Like if you're not fit for school or you're not suitable to go to school or you get in trouble, whatever, you can go to that school.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the one where we grew up. I can't remember what it was called. I was like, we had that too. And it was just a thing. People went out there and it was just they weren't their personality, or for whatever reason, they weren't ready for. Do you remember the name?
No, but I know
Okay.
what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, like in
That was a
today's
quiz.
terms, like for normal high school, there's alternative education,
Yes.
right? Which is for people who can't assimilate, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, we just started a new one. It's called innovative programming.
Innovative programming.
Mhm.
So
That's
they're admitting to programming people at least.
yeah. Well, they're really talking about the program, but yeah, no, there's no doubt that that's literally our job. I tell students all the time, I go, my job is like not necessarily to teach you chemistry. I go, most of you won't go into chemistry fields. And they're
Hmm.
like, why does the state make us do this? And I'm like, I'm programming you. I'm
Hmm.
teaching you how to be good thinkers. I go, because we don't want a society of people who think vaccines aren't real. We
Hmm.
want you to be able to think through, and we don't want you to be like, well, I saw it on my Facebook, so it's real. We want you to be able to look at the articles and see what's true and what's not. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
where's it coming from? Who's
yeah.
paying them?
I go, because right now you don't know how to think. I go, you're 14, your brain's literally not developed. I
Hmm.
go, so somebody has to develop your brain. I go, we're the programmers. We program your brain.
Yeah.
And I go, that's why people want homeschool. They're like, no, I want to be the one that programs your brain. And honestly, 75% of the time, I'm like, you are a horrible programmer. You should not do that. That's a bad idea, right? Like you wouldn't take your phone and be like, hey, I need you, random person, to program my phone. Like
Yeah.
that's a stupid idea. Give it to the professionals who literally know how to do it right.
Yeah.
Of course, then they'd be like, well, I don't think you're doing it right because you're teaching them to question everything.
Yeah.
That is
Well,
true. That's
especially
actually what I'm trying to teach them.
like at older grades, I agree with that 1,000%. I can
Yeah.
say younger, like because if you know the stuff and you want to do that, but when like we've talked about it before, like when you're teaching your child chemistry
Mhm.
and you have no idea like what's going on, or basic algebra, or any, like once things start getting more advanced, like early teenage years, you have to know that stuff.
Here is my sister. So I have a lot of sisters. So one of my sisters, she listens to our podcast sometimes.
Thank you.
She was yes, yay for you. She was talking, or yay for us, I'm not sure, but she was talking about homeschooling her kids once. I'm like, oh, you think so? And she goes, well, especially elementary. She goes, because I know how to read, I know how to write, I know my math, and I think I could do a better job than the teachers. I'm like, oh yeah, for sure, for sure. And she's like, well, I've been doing this my whole life. I'm really good at it. I'm like, yeah. I go, that's why you're coaching your kid in wrestling and baseball. And
Hmm.
she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, wrestling. Like, you're known throughout the state as knowing wrestling. You're like
Yes.
amazing. And she's like, right. And I'm like, so you're going to coach your kids, right? And she's like, well, no, I want like somebody who's awesome coaching my kids at wrestling. I'm like, oh, I go, you mean like somebody who's like been through it, who's like excelled, who's got accolades, and they're like an amazing. They're like, yeah. And I go, like, what about baseball though? Like, your husband played baseball in high school. Like, he's awesome.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, but I want somebody who like really knows it. I'm like, oh, and she's like, you're a dick. And I'm like, I'm just saying, like, you did, like, you're right. You know how to math.
Hmm.
I go, but for wrestling, which you clearly know wrestling at a high
Hmm.
level, you're still going to get a coach to coach your kids
Who's not going to know even as much as her.
who won't know as much as you, not even close. But you're going to get that coach because you think they're a good coach.
Hmm.
And she's like, nope, I get it. I'm putting my kids in school. I'm like, well, I mean, those people are professionals. They're trained. They have years of education purposely directed to knowing how best to educate your individual child, not the masses,
Hmm.
your individual child. And you're thinking you can do a better job because you fucking know how to read.
Hmm.
And she's like, I'm probably going to put him in public school. I go, I'm not saying that. I go, your school sucks. I go, I went to it. I'm like, don't get me wrong. Like, I wouldn't send my kids to your
Let's
school
not
for.
put the cart in front of the
I'm
horse.
like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you best think twice about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's a big difference.
Mhm.
And that's why I tell people all the time. They're like, well, like when they say, well, no, I want to teach my morals and I want this and this. I'm like, I go, we don't do that. We teach
Mhm.
societal norms. That's our
Mhm.
job. So we're paid by the government.
Yeah, no, I clearly remember only learning evolution, and I remember people cried in bio
Yeah,
too.
hell yes. And we still, this is weird, only teach evolution. we also we also only teach atomic theory and atoms. Like we teach atoms.
Do you? Oh wow.
We yeah, like when people are like, well, what about opposing views? Like we don't do that. Like I get what you're thinking, but that's not something we do.
Hmm.
Like I don't teach like algebra and anti-algebra.
Yeah.
I just teach algebra, right? To even go better, we only teach Euclidean geometry. And people are like, wait, what? There's more than one geometry? Oh, yes, there's non Euclidean geometry. You have to take those in college. Well, why aren't we teaching that? Because that's stupid. Like, that's not the point.
Yeah.
The point of geometry is to teach them how to think, not to do geometry.
Hmm.
So,
And if they're going to move beyond that, then they need to learn that
right,
stuff.
you should learn evolution because that's the real. Like that's
Hmm.
that's just what it is. And if you're sitting here, listeners, and I really don't want to be mean and I don't want to be rude. Like I really truly don't. If you're like, listen, evolution's not a thing. Literally, this is not a joke. My daughter works in a lab where they make evolution happen regularly. Not
Hmm.
only do they make it happen regularly, they can go backwards and forwards evolutionarily. Like it's not just like people will say that they're like, why don't we ever see evolution? I'm like, my daughter sees evolution literally every day.
Hmm.
And not only can she see it, she can tell you when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and she can make it happen.
Hmm.
Like you're living in an ignorant world because somebody told you there's two sides to this,
Hmm.
and there isn't. We literally can control it and make it happen and do lots of fun things with it.
Hmm.
It's literally amazing. So
Yeah. Even some of the stories are awesome.
oh yes, yes. So I'm just like, yeah, that's like real. That's why we teach it. But if you want to go to college and go beyond that and learn philosophy of religions, you get to learn all of these viewpoints.
Hmm.
And that's good because you're getting more educated, right?
Hmm.
But when you're like learning about COVID, I don't know if you know what strain of COVID we're on now.
No, I know a friend that just got some.
Yeah. Like I don't even know. Like that literally is evolution in front of you. It's
Yeah.
we are making the COVID that like they keep calling it different names, right? Like you've
Hmm.
heard like, oh, it's the Delta variant, it's this variant. We're making new COVID all
Hmm.
the time, new COVIDs, one after the other.
And then one's stronger, and that's the one that's talked
And
about.
that's the one that lives, and that's the one we talk about because it's the one that survived.
Hmm.
Like, hey, by the way, you're getting to see evolution in action. You're welcome. Oh, wait, I didn't do that. I take it back. I take it back. That was not me. That was not me.
That wasn't you doing that?
I was not responsible for COVID.
Hmm.
I did predict COVID. That is a true
Actually,
story.
it's awesome. I just finished that, though I talked last week about the Stephen King. And at the end of the book, he talks about in one of his older stories. I wasn't clear enough on it to remember it exactly, but
Yeah.
it was, I think he wrote it in 18 or 19, but it's basically COVID. And he's like, I'm really sorry about that. Things just happen. I didn't mean to do this. you know,
I remember driving, I think it was to your house. I could be wrong,
mhm,
but we're driving to North Carolina and we're like driving along and I'm sitting there and I forget what caused the conversation, an article, a news report, I don't know. But I'm driving and I look over at Amy, I'm like, we're at that time. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, we're about to have like a monumental disaster within the next 5 years. And she's like, what do you mean a monumental disaster? I go, monumental, like it's going to be a huge war that takes out a huge chunk of the population. I go, a huge disease that's going to take out a huge portion of the population. I
Mhm.
go, some kind of a massive event. I go, not like little, like a hurricane or a volcano. I'm like, massive, and it wipes out tremendous amounts of population. She's like, why would you think that? And I go, well, it's statistics.
Mhm.
I go, every year there's a chance that a monumental event, you know how you think about things while you're
Mhm.
driving? I'm
Yep.
like, every year there's a chance that a monumental thing will happen. I go, and when it doesn't happen, then the next year that chance is now better because
Yeah.
that's how statistics work. And I go, and if you go back to the last time we had something monumental that killed a tremendous amount of people, I go, we are at the point where statistically it has to happen.
Mhm.
You like the statistics say it'll have to happen. I go, it might be 5 years. I go, it might be 10. I go, but I guarantee we won't go farther than that. And she was like, what do you think it is? I go, either a war.
Mhm.
I go, Trump does something wrong and we go into a civil war or a world war because of it. So it must have been right at the beginning of Trump, right at the end of
Mhm.
Obama. And I
Mhm.
go, or I go, it's going to be some kind of a disease that just ravages. I go, we've had like 3 diseases in the last 5 years that have come close. I go, it'll be something. And like
Yeah.
after, like we're like into COVID for like 6 or 7 months, and we're like doing something. Amy looks at me, she's like, "Oh shit, you were right." And I'm like, "What are you talking
That's
about?"
awesome.
She's like, well, you said we were going to have a cataclysmic event. She goes, does this qualify? And I'm like, yeah, this qualifies.
This is it.
I'm like, now it'll restart. So I go, theoretically, now that COVID is passed, now it starts again. There's still a chance you'll have a drastic event,
Mhm.
but now the odds are very, very small. So it could happen. It's just small. It's like the 100-year flood idea or a 1,000-year
Mhm.
flood, right?
Yeah.
So like once every year of 100 years that you don't have a big ass flood, that means you're getting really, really likely, and it's getting to the point where statistically you're going to have one.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Just
so yeah, good
work.
times.
Oh, that's awesome.
So is that deep enough? Were we deep enough?
That's deep.
That was
And
deep.
it's deep too.
So yeah, any haters out there, feel free to put something in the comments, put it on Twitter. We will totally take it to heart, and we'll
Mhm.
move on. So you had something, you had a thing.
I did. I had something fun. And talking about Facebook, you know how they send you ads and things like that. And I've been I try to be leery because I have bought cool things for like
Mhm.
20-30 bucks and never gotten them from the ads. Just one of the just like I know better, like when I'm doing it. I'm like, this is worth more than $20. I'm gonna do it anyways.
I'm gonna get a Cadillac for $50.
But this was a class and it has the breakdown and all that stuff and everything to teach you how to do leatherworking. As far
Ooh,
as and the ad was for like what you would see at the Renaissance Festival type.
sure.
And I think it was 30 or 40 different designs. So, and it said it's all the steps you can come in without any knowledge and learn. And, you know, they tell you the important stuff. So I'm kind of excited. I haven't looked at it yet, but I bought it and it's just like, you know, I have it for when I'm ready,
That's
especially
that's
once we,
right in your wheelhouse.
yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. And
Yeah.
it's a limited commercial license. So I can sell up to 10 of each piece. So if that's
Okay.
the route that I decide to take.
And then if you modify the piece by putting an extra hole in it, you can sell as many as you want.
Exactly.
Yay.
Do the cut this way instead of that way.
Instead of cutting
So
this
yeah.
way, it's cut this
So
way.
yeah, it's I'm excited. I'm excited. It's just thinking of it, like just seeing it, I thought it was cool. And it also goes along with what other things can I do as far as hobby slash ways to make money and things like that. So
So Amy said, this is super funny because I tell people this and they just start like laughing at me. I told people at the library today and they were laughing. Amy thinks maybe for retirement,
mhm.
we do a bookstore. And I'm like, oh, Kilted and I have talked about bookstores, game stores, all these things. I'm like, so yeah, yeah, yeah. And she goes, no, no, no. She goes, I think it needs to be a bookstore, kind of like the one we saw in West Virginia. I really like that. And I'm like, right. She goes, but it's just a front. I'm like, it's just a front. She's like, well, yeah. She goes, like, your real business will be online and doing stuff online. Like maybe you would teach kids, or maybe you would give tutoring, or blah, blah, blah. She goes, because no one's going to buy books. She goes, the bookstore is just like a cool place for you to hang out.
Yeah.
She
I
goes, but the
love
real
that
business
idea.
is you'll be sitting there at the bookstore with a coffee shop right next door, and you're just doing your stuff on your computer.
That is a brilliant idea.
I'm like, okay, so it's a bookstore, but it's you're like not actually intending. She goes, no, and then for sure it'll be successful.
Yeah.
Like, for sure it would, because the goal is to actually not sell any books at the bookstore.
So if you sell anything, of course it's automatic.
You're like, oh, I just did that. And she's like, yeah, I just think that'd be great. And so my buddy Rick came up with a name, because I was like, I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about games and all that stuff, and the Manus Club we talked about. And he's like, oh, you should do Books and Bourbon, or Bourbon and Books. And I'm like, oh, I like that idea. Right? Wouldn't that be
And then
fun?
you could have your club in the back.
Well, I was thinking, like, here's my vision, right? So you have a coffee shop. Amy doesn't want to do any food. And I was like, what about my candy store? She's like, I don't want food. But she was like, but I would lease part of the space to a coffee shop.
Yes.
Or I would connect to a coffee shop. And I'm like, well, good, as long as in the back we get to have a game room, and I get to have bourbon there. And people can like have drinks of bourbon while they browse their books.
Yeah.
Or play their games or do whatever. And she's
That's
like, yeah,
awesome.
I think that'd be amazing. I'm like, all right. So yeah.
Sign me up.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, that would be a lot of fun. And I think you would sell memberships still
Yeah.
for the bourbon part.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's books, but if you want bourbon, that's a membership thing. Or you don't, it's a membership that you pay for, or you donate a bottle.
That's what I was just going to say. I was going to say, what if you had it where people brought in their favorite and that could just go in the collection, and then they have a membership?
Right. So that's your membership. Like every, I don't know what, I guess it depends. Like you'd have to figure it out, but like every 2 or 3 months, you have to bring in a bottle.
Yeah.
And then people can have drinks of your bottle or not, and if you bring in like a crazy bottle, like let's say you brought in some Johnny Walker Blue. Okay. That's like top shelf. People don't get that. You get like a years long membership or whatever, but only you or your friends or me get shots of the Blue Label.
That's awesome.
That's the proprietor, right?
See, even I need to get that name from Matt from the one bourbon that we had.
Yeah.
That was insanely smooth, super good, and 98 proof.
I just am taking this to another level now.
All right.
This is probably not going to interest a lot of our listeners, but I think it'll interest you.
If you make it all the way to the end, listener.
If you make it to the end, listener, yay for you. We do the bourbon, the coffee shop, the books. We have like a game room in the back where people can play board games. We have like a little spot for knickknacks. But one of the game rooms, that's where I go to do this, to do our games, to do our podcasts, to do that. Like I was sitting there thinking, yeah, I'm going to be just doing my podcast while I'm at the bookstore.
Yeah.
But like we're going to play Rocket League in a little bit. We put up Rocket League on the big screen. People can come watch us play, or play on like the extra computers.
Yeah.
Like a gaming lounge, or watch us play Rocket League, or watch us play whatever, or talk shit at us while we're doing stuff, like heckle us, and we'll stream it all on Twitch and YouTube.
Great idea.
Like, wouldn't that be fun? Like with our live studio audience in the back.
Yeah.
And they're like,
and that's going to be at the school in West Virginia.
Yes. But could you imagine people would be like, you suck, ball buster, right? Or heckling
That'd
you.
Be hilarious.
Wouldn't that be so much fun? And you just have it like up on the big screen and people can watch you.
Big whiffer.
Big whiff, you suck. So yeah, there's another idea. I'm kind of liking that idea. I think I'm going to retire now. So
there you go.
I think I'm going to retire and do that.
Solid plans now.
Solid plans. So speaking of Rocket League, we can get into a tournament in 3 minutes unless you have more fun to add.
That was my biggest thing. I'm super excited about it and looking forward.
Yeah, and to our buddy Nate, who wanted us to talk more on death, that's going to have to be its own separate episode, baby. It's going to be its own world. So
you
maybe,
should listen to this in like a month.
yeah, listen to this like a month. We'll probably have to do a 3-part death series.
Yeah.
So anyway, listeners, we love you. You're awesome. Subscribe, tweet us out, all of that fun stuff. And stay tuned for the next episode of Kilted Ballz. This is Ballbuster signing off.
Kilted Dragon Jerry, love you all.